So we got a little late, about 10 minutes in this session because I was just trying to send this file and there was some technical errors that I was getting. Now let us start the session. And this is our first session for the mains crash course. And briefly we will try to understand first of all what the course is aimed at, what are essentially we going to do, and how you are going to take maximum advantage of this course. आपको क्या-क्या हमारे साथ करना है, and basically what you can expect further. Okay, so let us start. So to begin with, in this advanced course, the objective is to help those students who are preparing to write mains this year, and objectively they have already prepared the basics, they have already covered the syllabus, they are well versed with the topics, but they need to brush it up as well as update themselves. And apart from brushing up and update, we also will get a bit into the answer writing domain. So these are the three things that we try to achieve through this course. That first of all that you already know, that get brushed up quickly in the key areas which are high frequency and what are expected areas. Plus you get advanced analysis on that, you get information on that. So for example, if I pick up a topic, let's say money supply, or let's say RBI. So whatever is there regarding money supply in debate in the last 2 years, that you should be aware of. What are the latest data related to that, you should be aware of. What RBI is saying in its latest report, that also you should be aware of. So these are the objectives essentially here. And then once we are aware of everything that is required, we'll give you some practice question and you can submit them, and we'll try to give a very quick feedback on them also. So जब आप एक बार उसको सीख लेंगे, once you are able to follow up to it, then we are also expecting you to answer. Okay. So with that, let us start the session. So in this session, when it comes to economics, we have divided economics into roughly 8 areas, out of which 3 are bigger areas and 5 are relatively smaller areas. The first topic is macroeconomy and fiscal policy. If you look at it from the mains perspective, then this is a topic from which roughly every year 2 questions are coming at least. Sometimes even 3 questions are there from macroeconomics and fiscal policy. And this is the topic which also includes all your areas from budget, taxation, and it also includes the areas from even welfare and the taxation and the government capital expenditure, etc. also. So this is quite important from that perspective. Then macroeconomy, when we say macroeconomy, covers largely your areas of growth, performance, stability. So basically, when we say economic survey padna hai, or you should be preparing from economic survey, update with economic survey, it is this macroeconomy that we are trying to understand largely from economic survey. Economic survey se jo hum expect karte hain padhna, wo sabse important hota hai macroeconomy. So it is this area that we are essentially looking forward to study from economic survey. So macroeconomy and fiscal policy, these will cover your survey plus budget plus other developments. And if you look at the questions, as I told you, 2 questions at least are coming every year, and sometimes even up to 3. Then another important area like this is agriculture, from where 3 to 4 questions are coming. If you just prepare these 2 topics alone, you will be able to answer about 5 to 6 questions in the mains. Okay. So ये 2 टॉपिक आपके सबसे बड़े टॉपिक है, बाकी टॉपिक से एक-एक क्वेश्चन आता है, and that too is not guaranteed. But from these 2 areas, you are getting 5 to 6 questions. Now, what are some of the developments here? What are the issues here? Let us start. The first topic that we are talking about here is macroeconomic challenge. in the Indian economy. So what are the challenges, what are the achievements, and what are some of the global issues? These three things we have to identify. And basically this is summary of your economic survey chapter 1. And since international system is too much in turmoil, since there are too many disturbances, now finally we are expecting a question on the international economics or the global economic performance this year. It is highly likely that they might ask you about this, that how the global disturbances or how the global economic developments affect the performance and growth potential of Indian economy. A question like this is expected because ever since Donald Trump has become the American president and the way in which trade wars and other issues have progressed, the world is too volatile for now. So that is the context in which a lot of things will be asked. So context, global issues and instability and conflicts. Now, from this context, what kind of question will come? From this context, what kind of question will come? This is what we need to identify here. So question kya aayega? Either from global issues, they will ask about India's macroeconomy. That what are the macroeconomic challenges ahead of India in light of global issues? That would be one dimension. Another dimension would be impact on growth. That would be another dimension. So question can be asked either in this manner. First, they will give you statement about some international system. Then what is the impact or what are the likely challenges for India's macroeconomic stability? Then impact on India's economic growth. Then welfare implications. This is less likely, these two are more likely. Welfare implication. So in this context they will ask you. Now let us talk about some of the major numbers here. So first of all, when it comes to the macroeconomic stability, the good thing is India has been able to improve a number of parameters, right? Okay, we'll also take down some key data in our notes which you can use freely in any question. So here let us start macroeconomic stability, and out of this the first number that we are discussing is fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit update is that India has successfully achieved the fiscal deficit target of 4.8%. India has successfully achieved the fiscal deficit target of 4.8%. And after that, you have to write, for the next year, we are planning to keep deficit under 4.4%. So this is the current data. Now, write one more thing here, that in 2021, fiscal deficit was above 6%. In 2021, fiscal deficit was above 6%. Okay, so now what is happening? From roughly what was 6.5% or even more, we have come down to what level? 4.8 already, and we are targeting to achieve 4.4. That means we have been able to cut down our borrowing. Okay, so wherever there is a question on stability, wherever there is a question on debt, wherever there is a question on fiscal deficit, this number you should remember. ये इस साल के पेपर के लिए important number है. Okay, so write one more data to support this. बहुत ज्यादा डेटाज नहीं है, आपको टोटल 20 से ज्यादा नंबर्स में नहीं लिखवाऊंगा आज. ओके, फ्रॉम इकोनॉमिक सर्वे 20-25 नंबर्स आर इंपॉर्टेंट. सो डू नॉट गेट इनटू टेंशन दैट सर इज गिविंग टू मच नंबर्स. नहीं, इसको मैं एक ही नंबर मान रहा हूं, मींस वन डेटा we are considering. So usme numbers there can be multiple because we have to cover the trend. You will never be able to remember this, but you will be able to remember the trend. The trend should be very clear that we have been able to cut down on borrowing. कि हमने अपना जो borrowing है उधार है उसको कम किया है. Then next line, due to this, so इसका impact क्या पड़ेगा? Now the impact of the same data on another data we have to study. Now due to this, the debt to GDP ratio has also decreased. Debt to GDP ratio has also decreased from roughly 63% to 54%. आपको अगर एग्जैक्ट याद नहीं रहता कोई बात नहीं. Even if you write 65 to 55 approximately, it will work. Okay, इतना चल सकता है. You do not have to be 100% accurate. अगर आप इतना भी लिख दें, you do not remember the number, just write debt to GDP ratio has fallen by almost 10% in last 4 years. ऐसा भी लिख सकते हैं. Okay, so do not worry too much कि आपको इतना नंबर याद रखना है, that you have to remember too many numbers. You have to develop certain ways in which you are going to remember these. Are we clear? So this is the direct impact. अगर हम हर साल उधार कम लेंगे, हमारा लॉन्ग टर्म में जो टोटल लोन है कम होगा. If we are going to borrow less every year, the debt, overall debt will reduce because we are paying as per schedule. We are paying as per schedule and we are paying at a high number, but we are taking less every year. That means the total debt will fall. So this shows macroeconomically stability has improved. Another number that we have to consider is inflation. So post-COVID inflation, and particularly due to supply chain issues, inflation touched almost 8% in 2022. Inflation touched almost 8% in 2022, and since then it has reduced to under 5, reduced to 5 minus or below 5. So which is another way in which we can show that stability has improved. Okay, now this is not complete. Later I will also discuss how we have controlled inflation. When I will discuss RBI value in the next session, I will be covering in detail inflation को कैसे control किया, what has been the RBI policy, what are the future things. So we will discuss it in detail, but right now in the context of macroeconomy, let us first look at the overall picture of India. And next number is current account deficit. This is last number. Whenever we talk about stability, we talk about these 4 numbers. Economic stability we measure by 4 numbers. These are fiscal deficit, debt to GDP ratio, inflation and current account deficit. All of these should be lower side. And fortunately, India has been able to cut them. So what is current account deficit? So right, the current account deficit has been reduced to almost 1% of GDP. Has been reduced to almost 1% of GDP. Again, we will do a detailed analysis later why this number has improved. Current account deficit कैसे improve हुआ? Which exports have improved? Which imports we have been able to cut? We will do a detailed analysis of that. Okay. So we'll get into detail of these numbers, and when we will do detailed analysis, ये number आपको और अच्छे से याद हो जाएंगे. But this is how we begin. So this is what economic survey points out, that India is becoming relatively more stable compared to what it was in 2021-22, that was after COVID. At the beginning of Russia-Ukraine war, India's macroeconomic position was bad. It was weak. And that was because of lockdowns, that was because of international supply chain issues and number of other things. And number of other countries were also similarly weak. However, India has been able to make a quick recovery. Not every country has been able to make such a quick recovery. So write in next paragraph now. These problems were faced world over by majority of countries. These problems were faced world over by the majority of countries. However, while India has been able to quickly recover, with a V-shaped recovery, this is what Economic Survey identified earlier. India has been able to quickly recover with a V-shaped recovery. What do we mean by V-shape? Let's say a country is following a growth trajectory like this. Okay, so let's say this is 2008, this is 2013, this is 2018. So likewise, you are continuously having decent economic growth. Suddenly, due to COVID, for the first time, you notice something like this, your economic output reduce. However, you quickly make a recovery and you next year are back on the similar track. Okay, if COVID would not have happened, you would be growing like this. Of course, you cannot reverse the damage, but आप अपनी trajectory पे वापस आ गए. You are not at the same output. I'm not trying to say that. Okay. So with V-shaped recovery, you are able to at least back on the same path. So this is what India has been able to achieve. So this is V-shaped recovery. So while India has made V-shaped recovery, other countries are still stuck, other countries are still stuck. For example, Japan, EU, Canada, Australia are in recession. Okay, they have not seen any economic growth after that period, are in recession. Meanwhile, world over, inflation has been very high. World over, the inflation has been very high. Now we will discuss the undergoing logic behind it. So every country in the world faced these challenges. Some countries completely crashed. They could not withstand this pressure. वो इसको झेल ही नहीं पाए. For example, Sri Lanka. For example, Pakistan. Pakistan has been kept alive on artificial oxygen from outside. Otherwise, it would have also effectively crashed. Sri Lanka has officially crashed. Number of other economies have officially crashed. They defaulted on their loan payments. So number of countries could not even manage it. Bangladesh situation was very good by 2020, 2019. By now, country is going down and down. So सभी countries को ये problem face हुए थे, but very few of them could actually recover. And countries which are performing well in the world right now are very few, and you can count them on fingers. And these countries are, for example, India, for example, Vietnam, for example, Thailand, Poland, to some extent China. China is not doing as well as it used to do, but China is doing reasonably okay. China is maintaining a growth rate of 4%, 4.5% in last 4-5 years, which is not very bad. Given that there has been a trade war, there has been a targeting of China in international scenario. So given all the conditions, China is not doing very badly either. So China is doing 4 to 5% or 4 to 4.5%. Meanwhile, Vietnam, Thailand, these are doing very well. Why? Because investment is moving out of China and it is going to these countries. Vietnam, India, Thailand, etc. Indonesia also. And out of them, India is the fastest growing country among the large economies. Among the $1 trillion plus economies, India is the fastest growing economy. So इंडिया की रिकवरी हुई है, बाकी सबकी रिकवरी नहीं हुई है. दिस इज द इश्यू. सो हाउ डज दिस अफेक्ट आवर फ्यूचर? सो वी हैव डिस्कस्ड द ग्लोबल सिनेरियो. ओके, Now, why global growth is affected? Number of factors are there, right? Next question, why global growth is affected? Question इस तरह से आएगा नहीं, but these are the logics you have to write in a broader question. You have to talk about that the global economic order is not correct because of following issues. So you will be talking about it. Why global performance is affected or growth is affected. So the reason for that, first, COVID lockdowns affected the economic cycle. There is an economic cycle. The supply chain, the system, the production, that got disturbed. Okay, so COVID affected the economic cycle. That's all what you have to write. That is point number one. Second, Russia-Ukraine war. Russia-Ukraine war affected raw material supply. Okay, for example, fertilizer prices have increased several times. Russia and Ukraine were the largest fertilizer producers in the world, among the largest fertilizer producers, apart from so many other things. So, affected the supply of raw materials. Third, the Israel-Hamas conflict has affected the global shipping. Has affected the global shipping, as the war is now expanded into Yemen, Somalia and other theaters prompted up by Iran. So we know of that. So global shipping affect hui hai. So people cannot easily enter into Strait of Hormuz, the route towards the Suez Canal, that is very badly affected. So all of that is affected due to the Israel-Hamas conflict. That means the shipping insurance cost have increased, the shipping charges have increased. So ये सब affect करते हैं international trade को, global economy को. Then apart from this, number of other conflict means that generally insurance costs are high and shipping is very difficult. So ये point हम roughly लिख चुके हैं, so we do not have to write again. But there are number of other small intensity conflicts also across Africa, and recently there was a full scale war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which was stopped only after Armenia ceded certain territory to Azerbaijan. So this was also 3 years ago. So overall there has been number of security issues in the global trade. Apart from that, another challenge that is faced is inflation, that we have already discussed. Inflation has been a very massive problem world over. So these disturbances itself is enough to disrupt the global flow of trade and global economy. Now we have discussed the global system. Now come back to the original question. जो world में हो रहा है वो इंडिया को कैसे impact करेगा? How this is going to impact India? Right, now impact on India. So how did we start? Remember everything? We started with the India's macroeconomic performance, and then we said the challenges that were there in 2021, they were faced by everyone, while India recovered, majority of other countries could not. Why other countries are facing issues? Then we have listed them. Now we are coming to the impact on India. Okay, India पे क्या impact है? So we have to understand, right? Point number one, no country is growing at 8% or more today. 8% or more today, as it used to happen 20 years ago. As it used to happen 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, lot of countries were growing around 8%, 9% or even more. But today, no country is growing around 8 or 9%. I'm not talking about very small, some local economy, but in general, sustainable growth at 8% I'm talking about. ऐसे तो फॉर एग्जांपल नॉर्वे रिसेंटली हैड 26% growth in 2023. Now that is something unusual because next year the growth was again 2%. So that was because Apple shifted their headquarters to Norway and that increased their national income by 20% for 1 year. So Apple ने अपना एक बहुत बड़ा, I mean not headquarter I should say, but it shifted their IPR, intellectual property rights to Norway. So इस तरह के I'm not talking about this type of event. I'm talking about sustainable growth over long period, कि लगातार वो growth होती रहे, एक बार का accident ना हो. So that is not happening now. And today, if a country is managing 6-7%, that you can consider to be as good as 8-9% of earlier time. जो पुराने टाइम में, फॉर एग्जाम्पल ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी, मनमोहन सिंह, वी यूज्ड टू ग्रो एट 8%. चाइना वाज ग्रोइंग एट 10%, फिलीपींस वाज ग्रोइंग एट 8%, बांग्लादेश वाज ग्रोइंग एट 8%. हर कोई तो ऑलमोस्ट इस नेबरहुड में पाकिस्तान को छोड़ के 8% या 7% ग्रो कर रहा था. नेपाल को भी छोड़ दे, नेपाल, पाकिस्तान, एक्सेप्ट दीज टू एंड लेट्स से श्रीलंका आल्सो, श्रीलंका वाज ग्रोइंग 5. इनको अगर हम 3 कंट्रीज को छोड़ दे तो बाकी सब उस टाइम पे 8% ग्रो कर रहे थे. So suddenly, why no country is achieving 8% today? Because of global disturbances that we have highlighted. That was the period of cooperation. That was the rising phase of globalization. Globalization was increasing at that time, and conflicts were very few and isolated. And generally, trade was on rise, global investments were on increase. As a result, all of that was happening. Now it is a very different kind of a picture. Now cooperation is decreasing. From multilateral agreements, countries are trying to shift to regional agreements or bilateral agreements. So multilateralism गायब हो रहा है, globalization गायब हो रही है. ऐसे में, for example, if all of this is happening, where the international cooperation, international system is collapsing, we cannot expect those type of high growth. So growth, if we do 7% today, it is actually not less than an achievement. ये बुरा नहीं है. This is very good and this is as good as 9. So effectively today our growth is affected by at least 2%. This is what I'm trying to highlight. और यही economic survey बात कर रहा है. That it is not easy to grow in today's scenario. If, अब लिखिए next point. If global situation would have been better, India's growth would easily have been 7.5 to 8%. If global conditions would have been better, then India's growth would have been at least 7.5 to 8%. So all these disturbances have affected our growth by 100 to 150 basis points. This is our conclusion. These disturbances have affected the growth by 100 to 150 basis points. Are we clear? So I have integrated all those issues. इसी में monetary policy, इसी में सब कुछ आ जाएगा. So for example, now how can I explain कि growth क्यों कम हो गई? Then I will go to monetary policy. Okay. So अभी मैं आपको सारे, right now what I'm discussing is overall performance of Indian economy. I'm not separately discussing fiscal policy, monetary policy, foreign trade policy. अभी जो मैं पढ़ा रहा हूँ पिछले 15 मिनट से, वो integrated बता रहा हूँ आपको. फिर हम सब चीजों को डिटेल में एनालाइज करेंगे. So for example, if we want to understand why our growth is less right now, so there are numbers to support. सिर्फ मेरे कह देने से मत मान लीजिए कि 100 पॉइंट या 150 बेसिस पॉइंट्स कम है. इसके पीछे लॉजिक है कि हमारा इंटरेस्ट रेट बहुत ज्यादा है. वी आर कीपिंग आवर इंटरेस्ट रेट वेरी हाई. वी आर कीपिंग आवर लोन्स अवेलेबिलिटी वेरी वेरी लो. हमने मार्केट में मनी सप्लाई को कम रखा है. सो देयर आर नंबर ऑफ रीजंस व्हाई इट इज सो. सो दिस इज डेलिबरेटली डन टू अवॉइड इन्फ्लेशन. ओके, लिखिए नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. In last 3 years, India deliberately sacrificed some of its growth. In last few years or last 3 years, India deliberately sacrificed some of its growth to maintain stability and control inflation. to maintain stability and control inflation. Now, let me tell you a story. यहाँ पे एक story आपको सुनाते हैं, उससे आपको बिल्कुल clear होगा चीजों का. So, what is the story? The story is after 2022, when Russia-Ukraine war started, the US dollar started to increase. America increased the interest rates, and as a result all the money from global markets started going to America. Whenever there is a concept called taper tantrum. Have you heard of this term? Economic survey has highlighted it several times. Taper tantrum is a phenomena. ये एक process होता है whenever American Federal Reserve increases the interest rate, all the global investments go to America. As a result, what happens? American dollar increases in value and all other currencies crash against American dollar. This happened in 2022. During COVID, America reduced interest rates. Now, if we know monetary policy, there is a very basic idea in monetary policy. If we want to encourage investments in the country, if we want to encourage growth in the country, then we cut the interest rate. During COVID, every country was trying to encourage investment. हमें क्या लग रहा था कि कोविड के कारण हमारा ग्रोथ बिल्कुल ही क्रैश कर जाएगा, हमारी इकोनॉमी बिल्कुल नीचे गिर जाएगी. तो उसको रोकने के लिए हम क्या कर रहे थे? हम लोग एनकरेज कर रहे थे बिजनेसमैन को कि आप 5% पे 4% पे लोन लो, लेकिन फैक्ट्रीज खोलो, काम करो, so that unemployment should not increase too much. So we were lowering our interest rate to encourage everyone so that economic activity will continue. So this was followed in COVID by everyone. Now this was done in 2020. By 2022, जो आपने interest rate कम किए हैं, the interest rate that you have reduced, they cannot stay very low for a very long time. You have to increase them again. Okay? You cannot artificially keep interest rate to be 1%, 2%. You have to increase them again. So as a result, America increased the interest rate in 2022. And one more problem was there. During the COVID year, 20 and 21, the inflation also increased significantly, because what America did, America gave a lot of cash to all the people during the COVID as a support. So America followed a policy of helicopter money. And due to helicopter money, inflation increased in America. There are a lot of concepts involved, okay? And very soon we will have a proper full picture there. Now, let's say in America, total production is 100 unit. During COVID, the production reduced to 80 units. Because of lockdown, people were not able to work, the production was coming down. So production came down to 80. But at the same time, those people who were not able to work, they were still getting the money. They were not getting their salary, but American government was giving them money. So people who were getting 100 rupees earlier, आप 100 रुपए का production करते हैं, 100 रुपए कमाते हैं. That's how things were there. Now instead of 100 rupee, people were getting 80 rupee, but 15 rupee to them were given by government at that time. Government ने लोगों को पैसा दिया कि आप खर्च करो. You should not be insecure. You should not face problem. But now the problem is there. Our production is only 80, but the purchasing power is 95, and that affected the inflation. प्रोडक्शन अगर कम होगा और मनी सप्लाई ज्यादा होगी, लोगों के पास खरीदने का पैसा ज्यादा होगा, तो प्राइसेस इंक्रीज होंगे. दिस इज प्रिसाइसली व्हाट हैपेंड इन यूएसए, यूके एंड ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ दीज कंट्रीज, जापान इंक्लूडिंग. इसीलिए ये कंट्रीज आज रिसेशन में है. इंडिया डिड दिस टाइप ऑफ मिस्टेक. इंडिया नेवर फॉलोड हेलीकॉप्टर मनी, एंड इंडिया वाज ओनली वन ऑफ द वेरी फ्यू लार्ज इकोनॉमीज व्हिच डिड नॉट डू इट, अपार्ट फ्रॉम चाइना एंड रशिया. और किस किस कंट्री में आज रिसेशन नहीं है? चाइना, रशिया, इंडिया. All the countries that followed helicopter money, they started to face problem of inflation. जैसे ही वहां इन्फ्लेशन का प्रॉब्लम आया, उन्हें मनी सप्लाई को कट करना पड़ा, एंड सिंस देन दे आर परपेचुअली फेसिंग रिसेशन प्लस इन्फ्लेशन, एंड दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम। ये बहुत ही स्टूपिड मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी उन लोगों ने फॉलो की, बट दिस इज डन a lot of time because often good politics is bad economics. जो पॉलिटिक्स में अच्छा होता है वो इकोनॉमिक्स में खराब होता है. So this was politically very important that they give money to people. So they gave it to people. In India, our government faced a lot of criticism, but still did not do it. Okay, and by the way, it was very rare that a government got re-elected after COVID. In India, the government got re-elected. Otherwise, everywhere, due to COVID mismanagement, due to the problems people faced, all the governments across the world in major countries, they lost their elections. So re-election has been very rare. Another rare example is France. Macron got re-elected. Apart from him, everyone almost lost the election. Okay, another example is now Canada also. So in Canada also Liberal Party. Anyways, that's not our topic. I'm not going into politics right now. So my point you should get कि जब आप लोगों को घर बिठाकर पैसा देते हो तो इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ता है. So this happened in COVID. So what they were doing, they were reducing interest rate, they were giving free cash to people. Within 2 years, their economy was facing pressure. And because of this inflation, they had to increase interest rate. Because of this inflation, 2 साल में inflation हो गया, in 2 years there was massive inflation. So as a result, they had to increase interest rate. So 2020 they cut interest rate. By 22 they had to increase interest rate. And what happened? Taper tantrum. And due to this taper tantrum, Indian rupee, which was 72 per dollar, suddenly fell to 82 per dollar. Okay, almost all other currencies crashed. Pound, which used to be almost let's say $1.25 per pound, became almost $1.1 per pound. And euro also fell down in value. All other currencies fell down in value. So this was the impact of the global disturbances. Now I've discussed a lot of things. अब इसको समेट लेते हैं. हमने बहुत चीजों को डिस्कस किया है. Let us bring it together. Otherwise we will completely lose the track of what was going on. So we started with what are the macroeconomic numbers in India, how macroeconomically we are performing. And we said fiscal deficit has reduced, debt to GDP ratio has reduced, inflation has reduced, current account deficit has reduced. So stability wise, India has improved on every parameter that it needs to. Meanwhile, India is one of those few countries where growth has been good. Meanwhile, globally, there has been a lot of disturbances. All the disturbances, then we have discussed how Russia-Ukraine war created its own set of problem, and then the Israel-Hamas problem has its own problem, COVID had its own problem. उन सबका क्या impact हुआ वो भी हमने discuss किया. Today, no country is growing around 8% as it was common 20 years, 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago. तो आज 8% पे कोई grow नहीं कर रहा है because of these many global disturbances. And then we have discussed this taper tantrum, that for 3-4 years, while US dollar was becoming strong, almost all other countries were facing the problem of poor currency. When your currency becomes poor, when your currency goes down, everything that you import become more expensive. Okay, something which costs me $10, let's say this pen I'm using is actually $10. Okay, this is a special pen which works on these digital board. No other thing will work that smoothly here. So it is a special pen. This pen would have costed me 720 rupees in 2022. And this pen is costing me 860 rupees today. So everything becomes expensive. Every imported thing becomes expensive when the currency falls down. So India में inflation क्यों हो रहा था? Not because of our money distribution, but because of lower currency. So now, right, inflationary pressures on India, and then we will sum it up. Inflationary pressures on India. So point number 1, imported inflation. Imported inflation. There are two factors here. Point number 1, initially it happened due to rising petroleum cost. Initially it happened due to rising petroleum cost after Russia-Ukraine war. So we may not remember today, but in 2022 when Russia-Ukraine war started, what exactly did happen? Due to Russia-Ukraine war, immediately the oil prices increased. Later on, because India was able to secure cheaper oil from Russia, oil prices fell down again. But एक बार 6 महीने के लिए oil prices बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गए थे. So oil, initially it was due to oil price increase, and later, point number 2, due to currency devaluation, all the imported products became expensive. Due to currency devaluation, all the imported products became expensive. Okay, and one more point you have to write. Once oil prices increase, food price also increase. Once oil prices increase, food price also increase. Comma, energy price also increase, increasing overall inflation. Food price also increase and energy price also increase. So this is the major reason why India has been facing inflation. So this is the broader macroeconomic picture. Now, in this scenario, if we are growing at 6.5 to 7%, it is not a bad number that we need to appreciate. Okay. So the strength of, now you also will get notes for this, the same notes that are being produced here. Online students will not be able to read the font right now, but it will be made available to you tomorrow. इसमें कुछ corrections है, in fact what you can see here in green, ये कुछ data मैंने इसमें update किया है, add किया है, so that is going to be changed today और ये notes आपको कल मिल जाएंगे. So tomorrow you will get these notes. Not everything you have to write, lot of things will be here also. What I have given to you as notes in last half an hour, that is what was required. अभी हर चीज नहीं लिखनी होगी. Now, going here, if we talk about India's macroeconomic stability, there are a lot of positives also. Okay, as we discuss low external vulnerability. इसमें एक और चीज हमें लिखना होगा. Right, next point. Among macroeconomic improvements in India, we have also been able to control. We have also been able to control external debt at roughly 20%. We have also been able to control external debt at roughly 20% of GDP. Okay, so this number has remained same. यहाँ 19% है, 19 you do not have to be exact, 20 चलेगा. और पिछले 20 साल से इंडिया का नंबर 20 और 25 के बीच में चल रहा है, 18 और 25 के बीच में. So India's external debt has been around in the range of 18, 19, 20. बहुत अच्छा है तो 18, खराब है तो 25. Okay, so 20 has been the average for this last, let's say 25 years. 21st century में इंडिया का external debt 20% on average रहा है, and we have been able to maintain it. Despite all the problems, we have been able to maintain it. So इसमें कोई improvement नहीं है. We are not saying this is improved, but we have control, we have maintained it. So this is good. जहां improve कर सकते थे उसको improve किया, जहां पे hold करना था उसको hold किया. So wherever we had to hold a good position, we have been able to hold on to it, and where we had to improve, we had improved. So this is the point that I'm trying to highlight. So this is also very important because in this period there has been a lot of other negative developments. And meanwhile, India's foreign exchange reserves have now surpassed our external debt. Now our external debt is close to $670 billion and our foreign exchange reserves are close to $690 billion. So effectively, they're slightly above. ये ऊपर नीचे होता रहता है, so we cannot make an absolute statement. Sometimes debt are more than the reserve, sometimes reserves are more than the debt, because anywhere you have 10-20 billion dollar change, you see a shift. But overall, the point is, today our foreign exchange reserves are almost equal or more than our debt. So that is a good, strong position. Okay. So these are the macroeconomic strength, as I was talking about. Low external debt to GDP ratio, a low fiscal deficit. Okay, so this is about the fiscal deficit, the number I gave you just now. Okay, so 4.4%, and it is reduced from 6.4%. So this number, and then I talked about current account deficit and inflation. So all these numbers we have been able to do. Now, what are the issues? So, right, macroeconomic challenges for India. That will complete our macroeconomic topic. So, point number one, a lot of growth has been financed by government's investments. This is one of the issue. जितने भी हम issues लिख रहे हैं, इस पे एक एक क्वेश्चन अलग से भी पूछा जा सकता है. They can ask you a question directly on that topic. Okay. So majority of growth or a significant part of growth is because government has maintained higher investments or capital expenditure. In bracket you can also write capital expenditure. This is problem number one. Problem number two, private sector capital formation or investment has reduced. Private sector capital formation or investment has reduced. So private sector used to be the major capital provider. Today, private sector share has consistently reduced, while government is increasing its share. The problem is, we cannot always be dependent on government. Investment should largely come from private sector. Government आज कर रही है, हो सकता है कल ना कर पाए. So this is something we have to keep in mind. Okay. Then next, bank deposits. Bank deposits are growing much slower than credit growth. This is another issue. Bank deposits are growing much slower than the credit growth. Okay. So what does it mean? कि हमारे बैंकों के पास पैसा डिपॉजिट में कम आ रहा है, बट लोन की डिमांड बढ़ रही है. That means eventually they will not have enough money to give out as loan, and then they will become dependent on RBI. Okay. It is both positive negative side to it. We will discuss it in detail. जो भी प्रॉब्लम हम लिख रहे हैं, इन सबको डिस्कस करेंगे. We will discuss this individually also. So this is another problem. Okay. So बैंक डिपॉजिट्स का स्लो बढ़ना, इसके रीजंस क्या है, इसके इश्यूज क्या है, we will discuss it. The next point, apart from this credit mismatch, credit demand mismatch, another major macroeconomic challenge India is facing is that consumption growth has slowed down. Consumption growth has slowed down. Next, Despite reasonable growth, job creation is still lower than expectation. Despite reasonable economic growth, job creation is less than expectation. Next problem, another macroeconomic problem. Despite all the schemes and policies, despite all the schemes and policies, government, despite all the schemes and policies, government has not been able to increase the share of manufacturing in GDP. So we have seen Make in India, we have seen PLI, we have seen number of other schemes, but ये इतनी schemes लाकर भी हम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का शेयर नहीं बढ़ा पाए हैं. दिस इज ए चैलेंज. ये भी आपसे इंडिपेंडेंट क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है. देयर इज क्वाइट ए हाई प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ दैट आल्सो. ऑल द इश्यूज दैट वी हैव रिटन दे आर इंडिपेंडेंट क्वेश्चन इन देयर ओन राइट. आज अगर हम इंडिया के सामने 10 चैलेंजेस लिखें, सबसे बड़े 10 चैलेंजेस, उनमें से 4 चैलेंजेस ये हैं. ओके, others are not macroeconomic necessarily. Macroeconomic challenges we have already written. Now 2-3 challenges will be there in the field of agriculture, and there are 1 or 2 challenges in some of the other areas, so we will discuss them. But right now, in macroeconomic perspective, these are some of the major challenges that we are facing. So with this, we always have a risk. अगर इसमें से कोई भी चीज अगर हम परफॉर्म इंप्रूव नहीं कर पाते, वी आर नॉट एबल टू इंप्रूव ऑन दीज थिंग्स, इट विल अफेक्ट आवर लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ. For some reason, if you are not able to supply enough credit in the economy, it will affect growth. If manufacturing do not grow in future also, it will affect growth. Okay, similarly, all these things are capable of stalling our growth. अगर किसी कारण से कंजम्पशन थोड़ा और नीचे गिरा तो हमारी ग्रोथ फिर डिक्लाइन करेगी. So all of these are warning sign. Okay, so we need to manage these issues in the coming time. फिर फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर में कुछ रिस्क है, not necessarily that they threaten the Indian economy, but they are on the lower priority. Okay, so let's say there is a risk that lot of people in India are now investing in risky assets in stock market. So I will discuss it separately. अभी नहीं लिखना है. I will discuss it in the topic of SEBI. Okay, tomorrow we will discuss that, and वहां पर हम RBI SEBI में cover करेंगे. For example, India has one of the highest share of people who invest in very risky derivatives. Options, futures, कहीं भी कोई भी सरकार अपने आम लोगों को encourage नहीं करती. Every government, every central bank discourages people, common people, to get into options and futures. But in India, too many people are doing it. And if you watch YouTube, if you are social media user, then you should be aware that all your famous people on whether Instagram or YouTube or जो भी influencers हैं, what kind of applications they are advertising about, वो किसका advertisement करते हैं, whether it is Binomo app or some other app, or they are all doing this. They are pushing people into these kind of risky areas. So in India, there has been promotion of betting, promotion of gambling, backdoor. Officially हम gambling allow नहीं करते, but unofficially we are doing a backdoor gambling, because India's biggest application on this Android platform is some Rummy app. Dream 11, some Rummy is there. Rummy is a playing card game in which people also bet money. So Rummy है या Playing 11 है या My Dream 11 है, these are all semi-betting apps, and these are the top apps in India right now. Okay, and they are being heavily promoted by everyone. So that is a problem. लेकिन ये दूसरे एरिया में हम डिस्कस करेंगे, not here. So risk profile is changing, and that is putting common people at risk in India. Okay. So with this, the overall discussion is there. Now we will discuss specific issues. So next topic after this will be the, let's say, taxation. Okay. Broader picture we have drawn. Now, the next topic is taxation. Is that right? India's tax to GDP ratio. India's tax to GDP ratio is close to 18%. Is close to 18%, out of which center has around 11.8 and states have close to 6.1. आप इसको 12/6 भी याद रख सकते हो. You do not have to be exact. You can remember this as 12 plus 6 also. So, tax to GDP ratio is 18%, out of which center is getting roughly 12% of tax and states are getting 6% of tax. So, right in the next line, this is an improvement. This is an improvement after the 16% in 2019. So in 2019, our tax to GDP ratio was 16%. It is improved to 18 after that. Major performers, so right? Corporation tax and GST. Corporation tax and GST collections have increased very rapidly after 2022. Corporation tax and GST collection have increased very rapidly after 2022. Meanwhile, the growth in custom duties, income tax, etc. has been slower. Meanwhile, the growth in custom duties, income tax, etc. has been slow. So, this is your taxation performance. GST has been doing well since 2022. Corporation tax has been doing well since 2022. Almost from 2017 to 2022 हमारा जो टैक्स है वो लगातार कम हो रहा था. Total collection was increasing, but it was increasing slower than the GDP growth rate. So GDP के comparison में कम हो रहा था. So in 2017, for example, our tax इतने नंबर याद नहीं रख पाओगे तो just listen to the story. उतने नंबर लिखिए मत. These two number, if you remember, it's is enough. Current number 18 के close है, 18 नहीं exactly 17.9 है, but let's say 18. Current number is 18. Okay, officially 17.9, but that's okay. And earlier in 2019 it was even less than 16. तब हमारा number 15 point something होता था. But I'm keeping rounding of 16. So 16% से 18% improve हुआ है. And this is a massive improvement because tax to GDP you do not improve like कि 15% से 25% पे आ गए. It doesn't improve like that. It increase very, very slow. So it's not bad. But the point is, how do we go ahead? Okay? और इसमें problem क्या है? We will discuss. So I've given you some numbers in the beginning and which taxes are doing well, which are not doing well. Now, what is the problem? The problem is, right in the next paragraph, majority of middle income countries have 30% plus tax to GDP ratio. Majority of middle income countries have 50% plus tax to GDP ratio. While developed countries have a ratio usually above 40%. Okay, for example, European countries, almost all of them, except a handful, have tax to GDP above 40, while developed countries have tax to GDP ratio of 40%. Only exception is your USA. USA में कम होता है, लेकिन that is a different phenomena. America में taxes historically lowest है. America has been able to, let's say, push itself as a low tax place where companies should be there. So that is why the majority of Fortune 500 companies are from America, not from Europe. क्योंकि अमेरिका में taxes कम होते हैं. Europe has very high taxes. Now think of it in India, where we have so much of population, we have so much development challenge, and we have a disturbed neighborhood where we also have to spend a lot of defense. जहां बाकी कंट्री अपने टैक्स में जीडीपी का 25-30% कलेक्ट करती है, हम 18% करते हैं. This is a major problem. That is why we are not able to provide adequate public services. As tax to GDP ratio will improve, we will also improve on our public services. So tax to GDP ratio is directly related to our defense capability, space capability, R&D capabilities, public service delivery, welfare, everything is related to this number. Okay. So of course, अगर हम compare करें पाकिस्तान से, तो पाकिस्तान का tax to GDP ratio 10% है. That is even poor, but they do not have majority of public services also. Bangladesh would have something like 15%. Okay. So I'm not trying to compare it within South Asia. I'm going outside South Asia. Then very few countries like Egypt, etc. also have low tax to GDP. But अगर हम किसी reasonable country जहाँ public service अच्छी है, वहाँ compare करेंगे तो वहाँ 30% plus होता है. And this is where the problem is, because a lot of people nowadays complain on social media कि taxes होंगे यूके जितने और services होंगे सोमालिया जैसे. A lot of people are make comments like that. People unnecessarily or sometimes maybe reasonably target the finance minister also. निर्मला सीतारमन के ऊपर बहुत सारे jokes बनते हैं. So while people may have some, let's say, grudge to that, but we do not understand कि जितना pressure इंडिया में public service delivery का है, जितनी हमारी population है, जितनी बड़ी country है, उसको देखते हुए इस tax to GDP ratio पे हमारी public services खराब नहीं है. Our public services are not bad given tax to GDP ratio. This is something we need to understand. And if we need to grow our public services quality further, of course there is corruption. I'm not discounting that. It can always be better within the same tax to GDP. मैं ये भी नहीं कह रहा हूँ. But considering all those factors, because those are human factor and those are present in other countries also. So अगर human factors को consider करें, if we consider everything, the major challenge is that we actually have to improve tax to GDP ratio. Public service quality will start to improve automatically with that. And in last few years, as our tax collections have improved, we have even seen that our public service delivery number of areas is actually improving as well. Infrastructure area, we have seen significant improvement. Electricity. In India, 70% of the villages used to have electricity 10 years ago. Today, 100% of the villages have electricity. Okay. So, infrastructure का जो expansion है वो decent हुआ है. So why I am discussing it in taxation question? आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा जाए पब्लिक सर्विस पर, दे आर आस्किंग यू ए क्वेश्चन ऑन पुअर क्वालिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन एंड हेल्थ, दे आर आस्किंग यू ए क्वेश्चन ऑन हंगर, दे आर आस्किंग, उसमें आपको टैक्स के बारे में लिखना है, दैट आवर टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो इज लो. दैट्स व्हाई आई एम डिस्कसिंग इट. ओके, व्हाई देयर आर प्रॉब्लम्स? बिकॉज आवर टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो इज लो. एंड टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो क्यों लो है? नाउ लेट्स गेट इनटू दैट. राइट, reasons for poor tax to GDP. Point number one, majority of economy is composed of self-employed professionals or shopkeepers or informal sector. Majority of economy is composed of self-employed professionals, shopkeepers or informal sectors. Now think about it. Self-employed professional, for example, your doctors, lawyers, how much taxes do they pay? They do not pay taxes, unfortunately, unless we are talking about big chain hospitals like Fortis, etc., जहाँ पर proper आपको let's say OPD slip मिलता है. Other than that, wherever you are given a rough doctor parcha and on which the nurse or the compounder gives you the entry of the date, no tax is collected. Doctors do not pay tax, frankly. 70-80% of the doctors do not pay any tax. Majority of the lawyers do not pay. So जो भी self-employed है वो tax नहीं देता है because they under-report their income. Shopkeepers under-bill or sell without bill, they do not pay taxes. Then there is big informal sectors. There are units which are not registered at all. So 70% of our economy is in that category. 70% GDP में नहीं बोल रहा हूँ मैं. 70% of the workforce I'm saying, not GDP. 70% of workforce is in that kind of work. Farmers. Okay, farmers do not have to pay income tax anyways, so they do not have to maintain records. Then shopkeepers do not maintain proper records. Professionals do not. So these are problems why tax to GDP ratio is low. So entire burden of direct taxes is on salaried employees. Entire burden of direct tax is on salaried employees. Okay. Even in indirect taxes, right? Even in indirect taxes, next point, the collection in small towns. The collection in small towns, wholesale markets, in big cities is low. Wholesale markets in big cities is low. Small towns में तो हर तरह की दुकान पे ही, और बड़े शहरों में let's say there are showroom which give you proper bill and where taxes are collected, but then there are big wholesale markets. For example, this Karol Bagh is also infamous for that. Chandni Chowk in Delhi is famous for that, where you do not get bill. You go, you buy, you do shopping with your family for wedding. आप 2 लाख के कपड़े ले आइए, आपको टैक्स का बिल नहीं मिलेगा. Okay? Same with Karol Bagh, except a handful of big showrooms. So this is the problem. So indirect taxes are also collected only on few areas where people have no alternative. Otherwise, people do that. Okay, people skip taxes. So indirect taxes are collected everywhere, but still over there also burden is more on those people who buy from supermarkets or branded showrooms, etc. वहां से ज्यादा GST collect होता है. So this is another problem, again, informal sector. Okay. Informal sector means where bills, records are not maintained. That is what I mean by informal sector. The establishment itself may not be registered. Then there is no question of bill. And if establishment is registered, then probably for some items they may give bill, or they will give bill only to few people who require and they will not give bill to others. So they under-report their sales. So this is another big problem कि हमारा tax to GDP ratio low है. और tax ज़्यादातर कौन pay करता है? Salaried employees. So whether it is the people working in big firms in private sector or people who are in government jobs, these are the people who cannot hide their income. Otherwise, these people also would not pay taxes. Now, that is the reason why these people who are just 5% of India's population, they argue we pay income tax, then we pay GST, then we have to pay tax every time we purchase a car, then we have to pay tax every time we fill petrol, then we have to pay tax every time we want to buy property. प्रॉपर्टी खरीदने पे रजिस्ट्रेशन का टैक्स देंगे, प्रॉपर्टी बेचने पे कैपिटल गेन का टैक्स देंगे. सो देयर आर्गुमेंट इज नॉट अनरीजनेबल because they have to give tax on every corner, okay, which is fair argument. The problem is tax base is very small. This is how we can summarize this argument. So we need to broaden up this tax base. This is how the things can change, okay. So these are the reasons for low tax to GDP ratio. Another big reason you can write, lots of tax exemptions, concessions, lot of tax exemptions, concessions, etc. for the welfare purpose, for the welfare purpose or promotion, or promotion. For example, solar power, electric cars. We do not collect taxes on these. Okay, solar power hai, electric car hai, or you can consider PLI scheme. Solar power, electric cars, PLI scheme. So what are we doing? हम tax concession दे रहे हैं किस लिए? We are trying to promote these type of sectors. So that is the reason. Then there are a number of other things on which we do not collect taxes. For example, food, for example, clothes. Okay. Food, cloth, majority of your unstitched cloth do not come under taxation. Your unpackaged food does not come under taxation. Yes, packaged food and ready-made garments come under tax, but even they are under 5% tax only. So tax is very low or tax is exempted for necessities. So these are reasons for low tax to GDP ratio. Now the solution. How can we solve this problem ultimately? Solution. How can we solve our tax to GDP problem? Just give me 1 minute. आवाज इसकी ठीक आ रही है क्लास में? Yes. आवाज ठीक आ रही है? अच्छा, यहाँ पे एक एरो बना हुआ आ रहा था, इसलिए मैंने पूछा. There was this mark on the audio button. ठीक है, चलिए. Fair. So I was just cross checking if audio is fine. Meanwhile, those students who are online, they can also ask questions, they can also send their doubts. So coming back, tax to GDP ratio, how to improve? So कैसे improve करेंगे? Point number 1, bringing agriculture under income tax above a threshold. Above a threshold. Okay. So let's say we do not want to trouble farmers, but we just want to say that a lot of people who right now take advantage of agriculture tax exemption, they should not able to take advantage. Genuine farmers should not be negatively affected. So let's say 15 लाख रुपए तक की आपको अगर प्रॉफिट है एग्रीकल्चर इनकम से, that is not taxed. But 15 लाख से ज्यादा आपको अगर एनुअल प्रॉफिट है, आई एम नॉट सेइंग इनकम, अगर 15 लाख से ज्यादा एग्रीकल्चर प्रॉफिट है, then there should be tax on the income above 15 lakh. That is not unreasonable. Okay, so above a threshold, agriculture income should have tax. That will already save 99% of small farmers in India. हमें farmers से tax नहीं collect करना है. That will not affect 99% of farmers because 99% of farmers do not have income above 15 lakh rupees. I mean profit above 15 lakh rupees. Okay. Problem is those people who buy agriculture land and show their business income as agriculture income and then exempt the taxes. Legally 10-10 करोड़ रुपए की agriculture income दिखाते हैं businessmen. They buy a farm house in outskirts of city, 10 एकड़ का farm house खरीदा, और उसपे 5 करोड़ रुपए का एनुअल प्रॉफिट, 10 करोड़ रुपए का एनुअल प्रॉफिट, और उसी के बाजू में जो हार्ड वर्किंग फार्मर है उसको 5 लाख रुपए का प्रॉफिट नहीं होता 10 एकड़ जमीन में, या 10 लाख रुपए का प्रॉफिट नहीं होता. सो somehow these people are able to use those agriculture exemptions as tax evasion system. So we need to plug this as a loophole. So agriculture पे हमें टैक्स लगाना होगा. We need to introduce tax on agriculture because this is badly misused by a lot of people. Next point, promotion of digital payments, something we are already doing. So when you make digital payments, things come under record and shopkeepers have to show some sales. Now there was a very recent case where somebody in Indore was caught. So Indore is famous for its night food market, and there was this famous case last year where some snacks dealer, koi golgappe wala ya koi, some hawker was reporting sales of some, let's say 20 lakh rupees per year or 30 lakh rupees per year. Let's say he was showing that every day I have roughly 10,000 rupees sale and I make 25 lakh rupees sale in whole year. 2.5 लाख रुपए की मेरी महीने की सेल होती है, and in the whole year I make 30 lakh rupees sale, and I have 40% profit or 30% profit, I make 10 lakh rupees in that, and we are 4 people working on that. So effectively showing that हम 4 लोग मिलके 3-3 लाख रुपए कमाते हैं. A family of 4 is making 3 lakh rupees each. But these people, because there was a lot of UPI payments now, so in the income tax record, when they cross-checked, they found on the same shop, monthly UPI collection only is more than 1 crore rupees. And then they cross-checked, investigated, and it was identified that annual sale was actually close to 20 crore rupees. Okay. So digital payments will keep a track. Promotion of digital payments can help government to cross-verify the sales data. So promotion of digital payments in that context is a very useful tool to cut the unnecessary tax evasion. Next point, promotion of e-commerce, home delivery systems. Okay. Promotion of e-commerce, delivery apps, etc. So even if you order, let's say Golgappa itself, when you go and buy in market, nobody gives you bill for that. But if you actually order it through some delivery app, there will be GST paid bill on it. So whenever something is delivered, there is GST bill attached. So automatically things come under GST. Whenever you order something through e-commerce, ideally हर चीज में bill लगकर आता है. So that is how tax compliance improves. Okay. Then simplification of tax system. Simplification of tax system. Reduction in tax rates. Encourage more people to pay taxes. Encourage more people to pay taxes. So if you remember in the budget last year, what government announced? That in the new income tax payment system, now the exemption is more than 7.5 lakh rupees. So what government is doing? Government has introduced 2 methods of income tax payment. The traditional system is, let's say, system A, and now there is an alternative system called tax system B. So people can pay their taxes in 2 different ways. In the one system, the tax calculations are complex, and there are a lot of, let's say, you get exemption for home loan, you get exemption for LIC payment. But in the income tax B, you do not get any exemption. The system is flat. Any income up to 5 lakh rupees, no tax. Income from 5 lakh to 10 lakh rupees, 10% tax. 10 lakh to 25 lakh, 20% tax, no exemption. This is a flat, simple taxation system. So, हमने क्या किया है? What are we doing essentially? We have simplified the tax and we have decreased the tax rate. And that is how we expect more people to pay taxes. This is precisely what we are doing under the new income tax system. So government ने tax system को change करने की जगह, rather than replacing the tax system, government introduced one more tax payment method. So people who are paying in their old system are paying as per the old system. For example, I'm still paying my income tax in the old system. I have more advantage in that, let's say. My brother is paying in the new system. So old system only favor those people who have a home loan. I have a home loan, for example, so मुझे उसमें 3 लाख रुपए का extra tax incentive मिलता है, which new system does not give me. Other than that, there is no reason for me to be in the old system. So majority of people have now shifted to the new system. Perhaps only the home loan people are there in the old system. So I will give you separate notes on it. अभी मत लिखिए tax system का. I'm just trying to link the point कि हमें अगर tax collection improve करना है तो क्या करना होगा. If we want to increase the tax collection, we need to simplify the tax system. We need to reduce the tax rate. और हमने क्या किया exactly? हमने वही किया. This is precisely what we have done. So इसके बाद जब हम individual tax reform discuss करेंगे, then we will be able to link these points. हम इनको relate कर पाएंगे. Okay? And what else we need to do? How to improve tax to GDP ratio? Further, we need to increase vigilance. वो common points है. We do not have to write that separately. जो administration के level पे हमें करना है, वो करना होगा. Vigilance बढ़ाना होगा. We need to be more vigilant. Okay, investigations बढ़ानी पड़ेगी, data collection improve करना पड़ेगा. These are traditional points. Better data collection. Okay, so those are traditional points. Now let us talk specifically about the tax reforms in specific area. अब हम 3 areas discuss करेंगे. So right, income tax reforms. Income tax reforms. Right. In 2019, government launched new income tax system. New income tax system. Under which people could pay taxes at lower rates, but without exemptions and special treatments. Okay. Now write in next paragraph, over time. So पिछले 6 साल में हमने क्या क्या किया है? Over time we have made several changes and made it more lucrative. Over time we have introduced several changes and made it more lucrative. This system has less loopholes. Easy calculations, apart from low tax burden. Okay, so this is what we have done. I have summarized all the developments under the new income tax. आपको कभी भी ये नहीं लिखना है कि कितने लाख तक की इनकम पे टैक्स लगता है, कितना नहीं लगता है. This detail is not required. Question will not be on the new tax system perhaps. Question will be on the comment on the recent tax reforms, how they improve the compliance or how they improve the tax to GDP ratio. So let's say after we complete the topic of tax, I will give you practice questions. मैं आपको बजट का टॉपिक कंप्लीट करके अभी कुछ 4-5 प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चन देके एक छोटा सा ब्रेक दूंगा. देन यू कैन आल्सो ट्राई टू राइट डाउन अ फ्यू पॉइंट्स एंड यू एटलीस्ट कैन थिंक अबाउट दोस क्वेश्चंस. सो विल जस्ट डू दैट. सो किस किस तरह के क्वेश्चन इन टॉपिक पे बनते हैं वो भी हम डिस्कस करेंगे. विल डिस्कस दैट. सो फर्स्ट वी आर कवरिंग द सर्वे एंड बजट. सर्वे बजट एक बार कंप्लीट होता है, then we will be, I'm not covering the entire survey budget, I'm covering the macroeconomic part of the survey and the overall budget concepts and developments. Then we will move to other areas. तब हम कुछ करंट अफेयर्स देखेंगे. So the point is that new income tax system हमने पुराने के साथ एक ऑल्टरनेटिव दिया. We did not discontinue because that would make a lot of other people unhappy कि क्यों चेंज कर दिया, why there was a need, there would have been people protesting against it. So to not make those people unhappy while giving other people an option, this is what we have opted for. Okay, and this is not a bad mechanism. When majority of people will shift to the new system, when the new system will become acceptable to all the people, we will discontinue the old system. Okay, so for example, let's say Maruti does this a lot in India. Whenever Maruti introduces completely new model of its car, when it changes the design profile and everything, in India, what they do, they maintain the old car in the market and they also introduce the new model as completely new car. Many times people do not accept the new model. They have affinity with the old. So they want to continue with the old design. उसमें थोड़ा बहुत आप technology update कर दो, but design बहुत ज़्यादा मत बदलो. A lot of people have their own preferences. Okay, so Maruti has done this and even Hyundai has done this. They introduce and maintain both the models simultaneously. And over time, अगर लगता है लोग अभी भी पुराना ही खरीद रहे हैं, then they discontinue the new model. So for example, let's say Hyundai Verna. Let's say Hyundai Verna used to be a very different type of a car, and Hyundai Verna is a model exclusive to India. In international market, there is only one model, Hyundai Accent. In India, Hyundai Accent used to be a different car. Then they introduced Verna. Verna and Accent was same car, उसी का नया generation. लेकिन इंडिया में उन्होंने दोनों को लॉन्च किया. Verna was not acceptable to people in the beginning, and meanwhile they were selling the old Accent. कम से कम 5-6 साल तक वो पुरानी गाड़ी भी बेचते रहे. Meanwhile, the new car also became acceptable to more and more people, and by the time the technology gap between both the cars became too much, then they discontinued the old car. Same happened with Maruti Ritz and this WagonR. Ritz was a new model of WagonR in the international market, and there are a number of things. So basically, मैं कार में नहीं जा रहा हूँ बहुत ज़्यादा, but this was just an example. This is not a bad idea. Corporates do it a lot of time. When they change the model drastically, they maintain both the things in the market simultaneously, और तब वो लोगों का public reaction देख के एक को retain कर लेते हैं. So that's what India is doing in this context. So let's move ahead. We were talking about the income tax. So new income tax regime is low tax regime with less exemption and easy calculation. These are the advantages. Okay, you do not get any specific advantage for LIC. You do not get anything special treatment. Everybody is treated same. Okay, so this is the argument. Next, right? Corporation tax reforms. Corporation tax reforms. Right? Regarding corporate taxes, we brought changes in 2019. We brought changes in 2019 with simplification of rules and decrease in corporate tax rate. With simplification in rules and decrease in the corporate tax rate from 30% to 22%. So corporate tax in India used to be 30%. We reduced it to 22%, and we also simplified the corporate tax system. Again, like income tax, we were with the same objective. Tax का rate कम कर दो और उसको simplify कर दो. We expect more people to pay. Same logic, same year 2019. So basically, direct tax reforms in India were carried out in 2019. Okay, 2019 में हमने direct tax के reforms के. And if I want to tell you the story of tax reforms, basically we have to remember when BJP government came in power in 2014, it wanted to bring the tax reforms. दोनों tax reforms वो करना चाहते थे. They wanted to bring both the tax reforms, direct tax, indirect tax. But they faced a lot of opposition. Initially, they did not have numbers in Rajya Sabha, so they could not bring the GST. By the time they could bring GST is what already 2017. And even in 2017, it was implemented mid-year, which is very rare. So, if after this they would have implemented direct tax reforms, it would have been 2018. And no government will make a major tax change before the election year. So they did not do it. They did it after the election in 19. So basically ये जो 2019 में हुआ इसे actually 2016 में होना था. It was on agenda in 2016. But they first wanted to do GST. Government made it a prestige issue कि GST तो हम करेंगे. And after GST, when they wanted to do income tax, it was already 18. That's why it was ultimately pushed for one more year. So 19 में हमने ultimately direct tax में changes किए, new income tax system as well as reduction in the corporate tax. And along with that, we also made major other changes. I will talk about that also. So corporate tax में हमने क्यों changes किए, right? In the next line. Apart from increasing tax base, apart from increasing tax rate, the advantage of, apart from increasing tax rates, the advantage of, sorry मैंने क्या लिखा है, decreasing, हाँ वो decreasing आएगा, that's why I was correcting. Yes, apart from decreasing tax rates, the objective of tax reforms was also to bring, the objective of tax reforms was also to bring other compliance related changes. Other compliance related changes. Hence, we saw changes in TDS system. And introduction of TCS system. And introduction of TCS system. I will talk about TDS, TCS also. TDS system, TCS system, and gift tax, etc. So ये सारे changes हमने उसी time किए थे. All of these changes we made at that time. So in 2019, basically we brought a broader range of tax reforms, and these tax reforms were based on a committee actually. So again, it's a long story. It was in 2003 that there was a committee under, it was in fact 2002, there was a committee formed under Mr. Vijay Kelkar. The committee gave its report and suggested for broader changes in our tax system. तो विजय केलकर कमेटी 2002 में बनी थी वाजपेयी गवर्नमेंट के टाइम, एंड देन इट वाज सजेस्टेड कि हम डायरेक्ट टैक्स में, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में बड़े चेंजेस करेंगे. एंड वाजपेयी गवर्नमेंट डिड इंट्रोड्यूस वैट, बट इट कुड नॉट ब्रिंग मेजर चेंजेस इन डायरेक्ट टैक्स. देन लेटर इन 2008 हमने एक डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड बनाया. वी मेड अ डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड, एंड दैट इज हाउ वी वांटेड टू मेड चेंजेस इन द डायरेक्ट टैक्स. सो 2008 का डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड इंप्लीमेंट नहीं हो पाया. In 2008, there was global economic crisis. Okay, there was a subprime crisis in America, which became global economic crisis, and ultimately the UPA 2 government also was caught in controversies related to the corruption cases, etc. So it could not bring any major legal change in its entire duration. 2008 में क्राइसिस आ गया, और 2009 या 10 के बाद जब कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स हुए, by after that time they were also under pressure. They could not bring changes. By the 2014 Modi government came into power, they did not have numbers in Rajya Sabha to bring major tax changes in the first 2 years. Only after they won Uttar Pradesh in 2017 they got the adequate numbers, and then they start making major changes. उसके बाद हम देखते हैं, then we see GST. Then we see all these direct tax changes in 2019. Okay, so in this numbers we have to see ये start हुआ था process 2002 में. That is where the origin of all of this. It was pending for 17 years actually. ये सब चीजें हम तब से प्लान कर रहे थे. Just to give you a history of it. You do not have to write all of that in examination, but just to give you a small history of the things. Okay. So coming back, this was based on Akhilesh Ranjan committee. Akhilesh Ranjan committee was on direct taxes, direct tax code. So the 2008 direct tax code was revised under this committee. और उसके basis पे ये सारे changes हुए. The new income tax regime, the changes in corporate tax, the changes in TDS PAN system, then the gift tax, everything was changed accordingly. So this was as per Akhilesh Ranjan. Because the original Vijay Kelkar committee was 2003. Things changed a lot. We could not bring the same changes as originally suggested. उसके बाद जो डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड था वो भी 10 साल पुराना हो गया था, तो हमने एक नई कमेटी बनाई. That is the background. So I have summarized all the direct tax changes and reforms here. And the idea that I have discussed is we made a lot of changes in income tax system, corporation tax system. Apart from these domestic factors, there was one more reason to bring these corporate tax change, and that reason was, right in the next line, corporate tax was also decreased. Corporate tax was also decreased to prevent flight of capital. Corporate tax was also decreased to prevent flight, FLIGHT, flight of capital. A lot of money was going abroad from India. Our businessmen were setting up their companies in Dubai. They were setting up their headquarters in Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Mauritius. And for example, Flipkart had its headquarters in Singapore. Number of other big Indian companies were doing this. So we wanted to discourage this. हम कैसे discourage करेंगे? In Singapore, the corporate tax is, let's say 10%. In India, corporate tax is 30%. Dubai में corporate tax 0%. So what we did, we first of all did an agreement with the Singapore government. We did an agreement with this Mauritius government. So we had an agreement with those governments, and we also made some other changes. So internationally हमने कुछ tax system को बढ़ाया. Let's say our objective was, if taxes in India are 30% and in other country they are 10%, obviously lot of companies have a lot of incentive to go to these areas where taxes are low. What if we reduce from 30 to 22 and these countries increase to 15, then this gap reduces to very low. So हमने अपना टैक्स कम किया और उन कंट्रीज का टैक्स बढ़वा दिया. We basically, it's not just India, it was USA also. So with a lot of efforts, the global corporate tax also increased. And as a result, the gap narrowed down. Now, Indian companies which had a lot of incentive to go abroad, 20% का difference बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. But 7% is not good enough. For 7%, you will not face inconsequences. And when you shift to other country, your cost also increases. 7% does not justify it, but 20% does. So this is precisely what India did. हमने अपना टैक्स काफी कम किया और ग्लोबल टैक्स को बढ़ा दिया. We cannot increase it directly, so we negotiated. America was also there. America also negotiated, and Donald Trump, Shinzo Abe, all these people were involved in this process. India, sorry, नहीं मैं लिखवाऊंगा अभी. So this process is known as the global minimum corporate tax. Right in the next line, at the same time, global minimum corporate tax was also introduced by USA. Global minimum corporation tax was also introduced by USA in OECD. Okay, OECD is basically the rich countries club. Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So they initially did it in OECD, that if you are OECD member, you need to have 15% of minimum tax. You cannot keep your tax less than 15%. That was the rule. I hope that is clear. So 15%. If you are OECD member, you have to do it. Later, what we did, we then pushed it in G20. India with its own system pushed it on G20. When it is in G20, then UAE also comes in there. And when UAE is there, then Dubai, Abu Dhabi, these also have to increase their tax rate. So Dubai, Abu Dhabi agreed to increase their tax rate to 10% and from 10 to 15. So they said we did not have a corporation tax because we had lot of revenue from oil sale. We do not need tax. But since there is a global minimum system, we will adopt it. So they initially said we cannot suddenly make it 15. We will do it in 2 phases. So they made it 10 and then they will make it 15 also. Similarly, Singapore, which had 7.5% corporate tax, they also increased it to 10 and they will now increase to 15. So that is how other countries are increasing. So इसमें कुछ diplomatic threats भी involved होते हैं and negotiation involved होते हैं. Lot of other things are there. Of course, India is in no position to threat. जहाँ threat की requirement है, we look at USA to do that. And where diplomatic negotiation की बात है, USA is there, then Japan is there. Japan is also, because India, Japan, USA, all of these 3 countries were losing it. There were many Japanese corporations which were also shifting their headquarters to Singapore, and that was affecting Japan. Indian companies were shifting largely to Dubai, that was affecting India, and American companies were shifting their headquarters to Bahamas, that was affecting America. So presence of these low tax countries affect other countries badly. So they made this a system that globally no country should have less than 15% tax. It is not yet a global system. It will be made a global system once it is pushed at UN level. Right now it is pushed at organizational level. So ये G20 में हम कर चुके हैं. It is already done at OECD. It is done of course in G7 because that is a subgroup within OECD. So basically some 50 odd countries today have this minimum tax. We want it to be there in other countries also in future. So basically what we did to prevent flight of capital कि हमारी कंपनी पैसा लेके बाहर जाए, उससे अच्छा हम यहाँ पर टैक्स कुछ कम करें. We reduce the tax and then we encourage other countries to increase their taxes, and that's how we can address all these issues. So that is how we can summarize the tax reforms. So direct taxes we have summarized. Okay. So with these changes, we have been able to encourage more tax collection. Ideally, with less tax rate, our tax collection should have gone down. So yes, in that first 2 years, it went down, but then it started to improve. After 2022, our tax collections have improved. Okay. Next tax reform will be GST, but before that, very small thing on the gift tax, right? One more thing. Apart from these, income tax rule has been amended to integrate the gift tax. Apart from these, the income tax rules have been amended to integrate the gift tax. Clear? It is now called perquisite tax. It is now called perquisite tax. And any income or gift received in cash or kind. And any income or gift received in cash or kind will be treated as part of regular income. any income or gift received in cash or kind will be considered part of regular income and will be taxable as per income tax, will be taxable as per respective tax slab, will be taxable as per respective tax slab. Are we clear? So basically हम ये कह रहे हैं, for example, if someone has income of 25 lakh, this is someone's annual income. In addition, this person is given a bonus of 3 lakh rupees at the end of year. In addition, the company also gifts a car to this person worth 6 lakh rupees as well. Then that car, although this person has not received cash, this person has received car, that car will also be considered part of the income, and this 3 lakh of course is part of your income. So anything extra that you received in cash or kind will be treated. So basically in the income tax calculation, your income will be 34 lakh. There will not be a separate tax of gift. There will not be a separate tax on bonuses. Okay. So earlier these were called fringe benefit tax. These were under gift tax. We have integrated that within the tax system. These are not separate taxes. Basically your income will be calculated after considering these products. So let's say my company gives me something. Now company push that in the cost. Okay. Company might argue that 6 lakh rupee is part of the company's cost because it is giving it to the employee. But since employee is not receiving cash, they will also not pay taxes on it. So these were earlier under gift tax concept. But now simple idea, आपने employee पे खर्च किया या पैसा दिया, basically you have given them income. That is the concept, and that is a better and much easy to calculate system. So this is also what we have introduced. Okay. So now gift tax and fringe benefit all is part of income tax system as perquisite tax. So this is another change in the tax system. Last reform is GST. So we will not be discussing what is GST and what are the major features of GST. I do not think we are at that stage now, since we are discussing in crash course. I'm assuming कि आपको GST के basics पता है, that it is a tax on consumption. It is a consumption based tax. It is a destination based tax, and it is a tax based on the principle of input tax credit. Okay. And that it eliminates the problem of double taxation or multiple taxation. It eliminates the problem of cascading effect. So all those are standard concepts. Now we are moving ahead. We are discussing the trend कि GST से हमने major क्या achieve किया, what we are trying to achieve through GST. So right, GST proved to be a problem in the beginning in terms of revenue. GST proved to be a problem in the beginning in terms of the revenue. However, later the revenue problem got resolved. However, later the revenue problem got resolved after we made following changes. So reforms we are talking about in the GST. So basically हम क्या डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? We are not discussing कि GST क्या था. We are discussing GST में हमने क्या क्या चेंज किया रेवेन्यू इंप्रूव करने के लिए. That's what we are essentially discussing. Right? Point number 1. Shifting a number of products to higher tax slabs. shifting a number of products to the higher tax slabs. For example, plywood. For example, plywood from 5% to 12%. Okay. Similarly, cosmetic products from 18% to 28%. Not all cosmetics, but some of the cosmetics. Okay. Cosmetic products from 18% to 28%, etc. This is just to give you some ideas. So we have been doing it constantly. So in the beginning, when we introduced GST, GST's tax potential was poor. Too many products were in lower tax category. Earlier, we had excise, we had sales tax, and we had octroi plus others. So average tax on large number of products was around 25% to 35%. When we introduced GST, tax on them suddenly reduced to 18%. On some cases, even 12%. Okay, for example, plywood. If we calculate the excise and sales, plywood पे tax पहले 23-24% होता था, but after GST it came in 12% category or 5% category. Okay, तो हमने उसको फिर बाद में बढ़ाया. So basically in the beginning we were very much liberal in the tax rates. We were keeping tax rates lower than what they should have been. Later on we addressed this problem. Okay. So in the beginning, basically government wanted to maintain lower tax burden, and then slowly with time, it wanted to see which taxes can be increased. अब भी taxes on average पुराने tax system से कम है. Okay, people do not understand this thing because they compare tax, I mean GST with the sales tax. So they do not calculate excise in that picture. That's why they are not able to compare. GST rates, except a few products, are still lower than the earlier taxes. Okay? क्योंकि पहले सिर्फ वैट का टैक्स बिल देखते हैं. शॉपकीपर यूज्ड टू गिव द वैट बिल, एंड शॉपकीपर अपने वैट बिल से कंपेयर करता है कि पहले 8% का वैट लगता था, अभी 18% का जीएसटी. बट दे डू नॉट रिमेंबर उस पे पहले 12% का या 15% का एक्साइज लगता था, which was collected at the factory level by the state. So if you collect both of them, calculate both of them, because now GST is collected in place of both of them. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक्साइज भी और जीएसटी भी दोनों लगता है. We do not collect both excise and GST. We only collect GST. Excise has been discontinued except for alcohol and petroleum where GST is not introduced. उन दो प्रोडक्ट को छोड़ दे, बाकी सब जगह there is only GST except these two products where we still have the VAT system, the sales tax and the excise. So earlier we had excise plus sales or VAT. Sales tax only was called VAT in India. So combined the tax burden was much higher. GST decreased the tax burden on people. Okay, that is actually the truth, but somehow we are not able to observe that properly. Nonetheless, that's not an issue. Another method through which GST improved the compliance was, right, by covering the next point, by covering the loopholes in the input credit system. By covering up the loopholes in the input tax credit system or input credit system. So basically, if you are buying some product for further sale, you are not end user of a product, you get refund of your tax that you have paid. If you are not consumer of the product, you do not have to pay tax. This is the concept of GST. If you are buying something so that you will sell it to someone else, then the tax you have paid is refunded back to you. Now, some people were submitting fake bills or fake invoices that they have purchased this raw material. In reality, they didn't purchase anything at all. These were fake invoices, but our system was unable to detect them in the beginning. And government was giving money to these people instead of collecting money from them. So there was a massive fraud which was actually to the tunes of lakhs of crore. This was a massive scam. Now, after we address these problems, we have identified GST collections have improved. How much they have improved? They have improved from roughly 90,000 to 1 lakh crore per month to almost 1.65 lakh crore per month. This much is the improvement. Earlier in 2019, we were collecting between 90,000 to 1 lakh crore rupees per month. Today we are collecting 1.65 lakh crore rupees per month on average. Okay. So there is a massive improvement in the GST tax collection. This number is enough for us. We do not have to remember other 1.65 lakh crore. So this is all about the tax reforms. Apart from these also there are smaller tax reforms, but on them there will not be a direct question. And if there is a general question on tax reforms, I have already given you a lot of points. You have direct tax reforms in income tax, in corporation tax, then you have global minimum corporation tax, you have gift tax, you have GST. There are a number of reforms that are there. आप ये सब भी लिख देंगे, that will be enough to cover up for the last decade of reforms. And there can be a question on tax reforms, it is highly likely. So let's write some practice questions and then we will look into the expenditure side of the budget. So, right. The global disturbances or instability, the global disturbances or instability can derail India's growth, and progress as well. Critically analyze. So what will come in that? क्या आएगा इसमें? You have to talk about, yes, there are vulnerabilities, yes, there are impact. Whatever happens globally affects India also. India is a player in that picture. But India is not yet completely dependent on other economies. Still, majority of our GDP is dependent on domestic consumption. We are exporting more, but still we are not dependent on exports. And instability will not completely destroy all the export potential. So, agar export thoda bahut ghटता bhi hai, still that will not be major part of our GDP. That is something we need to remember in this context. Then, countries are affected worst when their instability is high, when their macroeconomic stability is poor. Fortunately for India, in the last 3-4 years, we have been able to improve in all the parameters. Hence, the impact of global disturbances of India is likely, but it is unlikely that it will completely derail the progress. That is how you need to answer. You need to justify it with numbers, argument and logic. आपका logic क्या होगा? First of all, our growth is already less than its potential. Growth is already affected. If there would not be global inflationary pressure, we would have been able to keep a lower rate of interest. And our growth already would have been 7.5%. So growth is already affected, but beyond that, how much it can be affected more? Maybe little more. चीजें और खराब हो जाएंगी तो थोड़ा growth और कम हो जाएगा. But it cannot, or it is highly unlikely that it will completely derail or it will affect our progress so badly that our progress is disrupted. This is what will be the narrative. अब इसमें arguments क्या क्या you can easily develop. Next question. What are the major what are the major short and long term challenges for India? What are the major short and long term challenges for India or Indian economy? For Indian economy, and how we are planning to tackle them. Okay, so I will give you some time for this. आप इस क्वेश्चन को ट्राई करिए. It's not very difficult. You have to think about all the government policies, programs and developments in the last 5 years. पिछले 5 साल में हमने क्या-क्या चेंजेस किए उस बारे में सोचिए. You have to think about it and then you can answer. Okay, this question you should try. Next question. India's tax collection effort has improved but has not made sizable impact on tax revenue. Examine. Next question. To what extent is it correct? To what extent is it correct that middle class is overburdened with tax in India? That middle class is overburdened with tax in India. This topic has trended on social media for last 2-3 years. और सोशल मीडिया ट्रेंड से पेपर में टॉपिक कभी कभी आ जाते हैं if they are academic enough. So although it's a feeling of people, but क्या academically हम आंसर कर सकते हैं? आंसर is yes. We can give academic answer to it. And इस क्वेश्चन का आंसर भी yes है. That yes, middle class is disproportionately burdened. Rich businessmen, they are not salaried employee. Their income they can manipulate by showing losses in their companies. And the lower classes, they are mostly in self-employment or informal sector. And they also can afford not to pay taxes because their data are not collected. So because of these factors, only it is the middle class, neither the very rich, neither the very poor, who are under the pressure to pay taxes. It is the middle people who are under most of the pressure. While indirect taxes have to be paid by all of them, it is only about direct taxes that we are talking. So ये भी clear करना है कि indirect tax का burden सब पे पड़ता है. It is direct tax that we are essentially talking about. And in the direct taxes, yes, it is true, middle class people have to bear more burden. Okay, so not very difficult to argue, but my gut feeling says इस तरह का question अब आ सकता है, because this is a very big social media trend. और social media trend matter करते हैं if they are academic enough to be asked. Okay, Subhash Chandra Bose, there was a question on him when it was trending on social media about the investigation in his death, and there were a lot of, let's say, noise around that. There was a question. Abhi, let's say, on social media, Jyotiba Phule is speaking. पिछले काफी समय से डिबेट चल रहा है ज्योतिबा फूले के टॉपिक पे, because there is a film coming on him, and उसकी वजह से इस बार क्वेश्चन बनाते हो सकता है एग्जामिनर ज्योतिबा फूले पे पूछ ले. सो कहीं ना कहीं ये ट्रेंड्स हमें याद रखने चाहिए. वी शुड रिमेंबर दिस ट्रेंड. इस बार डिफेंस बजट पे भी वो पूछ सकते हैं. ऑल्दो इट इज अनलाइकली, बहुत अनलाइकली है क्योंकि पब्लिक डोमेन में बच्चों के पास डेटा नहीं होगा लिखने को, बट स्टिल दे कैन आस्क यू अबाउट डिफेंस बजट एज वेल. ओके, उतना उसमें कंटेंट नहीं है, तो आई डू नॉट थिंक इट कैन बी इंडिपेंडेंट क्वेश्चन. मे बी दे विल आस्क विद सम अदर पार्ट, किसी के साथ इंटीग्रेट करके पूछ सकते हैं. जनरल बजट पे क्वेश्चन पूछकर बाद में उसमें डिफेंस बजट का पार्ट डाल सकते हैं. Okay. Do you agree that the quality of budget expenditure in India has deteriorated in last few years? In this context, is it justified that we increase our defense expenditure further? इसका आंसर है कि जो भी हम एज्यूम कर रहे हैं वो रॉन्ग है. आई मीन आप इसको आंसर कर सकते हैं. सो इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट दे कैन आस्क यू. सो बेसिकली आई एम थिंकिंग अबाउट ऑल द पॉसिबल एरियाज which they can ask given the current developments of the last 2 years. Okay, उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में क्या क्या पूछा जा सकता है वो मैं आपको. नाउ यू शुड ट्राई राइटिंग अबाउट दीज क्वेश्चंस. थोड़ा सा इनको और डिस्कस करते हैं. लेट्स टेक अ स्मॉल ब्रेक and then we continue the session. Okay, I'm also speaking completely non-stop for last 2.5 hours, so I also have some water and tea, and then we'll resume in about 10 minutes. Okay, and meanwhile online students also should try to read these questions, try to work out क्या करना है इसमें, and then we'll have a discussion further. अभी आप 15 मार्क्स के हिसाब से करिए. सभी लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस है ऑलमोस्ट. Hello students, so let us resume our session. So I give you certain practice questions and I asked you to work on them, and we wanted you to work out on certain ideas and then move ahead from that. So regarding the question, the major challenges that India is facing, we did discuss the themes, that what are the major challenges for India today. So over there we have to talk about that. First of all, the major challenges facing India are the slow deposit growth compared to the credit growth. Okay, this is one of the major challenge. And then the slight decrease in consumption. Okay. And dependency on government investments. So these 4 or 5 are major challenges that we can identify today. Okay, some of the challenges we have also addressed in past. Meanwhile, what is our strategy to deal with the challenges? In the past recent years, we have seen that major focus has been on building infrastructure. This is one of the key area where India has worked very hard and where a lot of public sector spending has been focused on. So infrastructure is one of the area where government efforts are visible, where government funding is visible. In this context, you have to talk about NIP, PM Gati Shakti, and you have to talk about new logistics policy. So these are major initiatives, and with this we want to improve the efficiency of Indian manufacturing sector, and we want to improve the overall impact of India's exports, overall efficiency, overall impact on the export efficiency, let's say. So that's one of the key area. With this, we want to decrease cost. Apart from infrastructure spending, which is one of the key area, another area has been ease of doing business. Ease of doing business has been one of the focus areas. Then another focus areas has been the focus on digitization. This is also one of the focus areas. So what are we trying to achieve with that? Okay. One thing is, since private sector investments have been relatively low in recent time, by providing infrastructure support, by improving our business easiness, business readiness, we are trying to encourage more and more private sector investment. Encourage private investment. Okay. For this, for example, PIL, okay, sorry, PLI, production linked incentives. This is a major scheme in this context. Make in India. So with this, what are we trying to do? We are trying to encourage private sector investment, which have been decreasing. Okay. Since private sector investment is low, we are keeping government investment to be high. But that investment is not in some unnecessary areas. All the government investment is in the key infrastructure sector, which improves the overall efficiency in the system. So that is also improving the system. Okay. That is also addressing the challenges. Meanwhile, to encourage consumption, what are we doing? Meanwhile, to encourage consumption, we are trying to keep inflation low. By controlling the price rise, we are trying to maintain the consumption levels. And when we compare it to some of the other countries where there is a bigger recession, India's consumption decrease has been much lower in comparison. So we have been reasonably successful in that context. Okay. So regarding that also, we can argue that things are not as bad as it appears. And while there are challenges, we are also working on them. So likewise, you can talk about, आपको याद रखना है पिछले कुछ सालों में major challenges क्या-क्या हैं और उनके लिए क्या-क्या initiatives हैं. So if there is a challenge of, let's say, lack of private sector investment, there are a lot of initiatives for that. If there is a problem of lack of private sector investment, there is government sector investment increase. Okay. The answer whether economic development will become dependent on it, then the answer is no, because government is not making those investments in industries. So government do not have to continue spending continuously to maintain those. Government can keep on developing new infrastructure every year. Meanwhile, once we have a minimum infrastructure standard, once we have a good governance system and we are able to attract the best of the companies, then we will also get private sector investments eventually. At present, the risk taking is low. all the companies are trying to delay their investment decision. ऐसा नहीं है कि इंडिया में इन्वेस्टमेंट कम है, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आर लेस एवरीवेयर इन द वर्ल्ड इन जनरल except a handful of countries. People are holding on to their investment decision. For example, Apple. Now, Donald Trump is openly threatening Apple that it should not invest anywhere else in the world and it should rather invest in USA. Meanwhile, other countries are also trying to implement some protectionism, and there are many other challenges like that. In this scenario, what companies will do? They cannot manage to openly take on the antagonism of their president. They cannot make their president very unhappy in this moment. So what companies will do? Companies will have to comply. Companies will keep silent for the timing. What they will do? They will delay it for the timing. वो अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स डिले कर देते हैं. Since Apple already had a immediate planned investment for a long time, they did not delay. But I'm giving this as an example. If your president, who is also very aggressive and also very unstable and I would say is very moody person, you do not want to be in wrong books of that person. What you will do, if that person is asking you to reverse your decision, what you will do? You will neither reverse your decision and probably you will not even take a decision. You will halt your decision. आप कुछ टाइम के लिए रुक जाएंगे. You will wait for the things to improve until you take your decision. This is what is happening, and not just about America. It is a problem world over. So, given the global scenario, given the number of conflicts that are going on, there are a number of challenges. In this scenario, it is quite natural that companies are delaying their decisions. Companies are keeping things on halt a bit. And with this, we can expect decrease in investments everywhere. And same is happening in India. Once companies will start taking decisions, when companies will take final decision, we will find that a lot of them will eventually come to India. And for that, India is not sitting silent. India is also improving its infrastructure. India is also improving its business system. India is also trying to improve its legal system. So that's what we can argue. This is one example, and likewise you can talk about other problems. So this is what I wanted to highlight today. Okay. So today we have covered some of the major issues related to the global stability, domestic stability, macroeconomic challenges, the budget related development, okay, particularly the taxation. So that part we have done today. And towards the end, we will discuss one more thing, and that will finish the budget aspect. So, moving ahead, we'll talk about the government expenditure. So, first of all, we discussed that our tax to GDP ratio. Okay. Let's say it is 18% for India as a whole. Meanwhile, non-tax to GDP ratio or non-tax revenue basically, that is another 2%. Okay. Non-tax revenue is another 2%. And that makes tax revenue to be about 20%. But when we look at the total expenditure of all the governments, it is close to 26% of the GDP. So that means when we combine it for center and states, the total deficit is somewhere around 5.5 to 6%. It is somewhere 25.5 something. So roughly, we are talking about 5.5% of borrowing. Okay. The overall revenue of the center plus state is close to 20%. Okay. And after that, what is remaining is borrowing. So the total expenditure of center plus state is close to 25 to 26%. Now, in what manner do we spend? Let us analyze for center. Center's expenditure is close to roughly 17% of the GDP. Okay. Center's expenditure is close to 17%, sometimes even touching 18% of the GDP. Out of this, 12% it is getting from taxes. If we include non-taxes, for example, government collect money from fees, fines and other sources. If we include other things, then it becomes 13%. Okay. Revenue receipts are about 13% of the GDP, and the remaining 4 to 5% is borrowing, and which is fiscal deficit basically. So this is what we are looking at, the expenditure. Now we have discussed, if we are central government is spending 18 rupees, 12 rupee it is getting from tax, 1 rupee it is getting from non-tax, 5 rupees, roughly 4 to 5 it is getting from borrowing. This is the analysis of the budget, general analysis of the budget, where we are spending that money. That's something that we need to discuss. If we look at the expenditure, out of the 17-18%, let's say roughly 25% of this goes to interest payment. Central government, about a quarter of its expenditure is interest payment, means roughly 4.5% of GDP is paid back as interest. This is what we have as interest payment. Then another 25% is spent on salary plus pension plus maintenance, etc. Okay. Another 25% of government expenditure goes towards maintenance of government buildings, government vehicles, salaries, pensions of government employees, okay, plus the defense. This is another 25%. Then another 15% goes to the states. Okay, as per Finance Commission rules, as per other ideas. That means roughly 65%, 2/3 of our total expenditure is only in these areas. And it is only out of the remaining 1/3 expenditure, 35%, we have to cover our welfare, we have to cover our development. Okay. If government spends 100 rupees, let's say, then 25 rupees go toward interest payment. 25 rupees go into salary, pension, maintenance, defense. And defense, we only mean salary, pension and maintenance part in defense, not the defense purchase. Salary, pension of the soldiers plus the maintenance of the defense camps, etc. So that only is 25%. That is all reoccurring expenditure. Every year you have to make it. Then states plus the center sponsored scheme. This is 15%. Center sponsored scheme are also distributed through states. So that's why I've kept it within the states category. So this is 2/3 of the expenditure. Out of the remaining 15% is on center schemes plus subsidies, and 20% is on development expenditure, which is capex. So this is the trend in the last few years. This is what we have been doing. Okay, so I have done some expenditure analysis with you, that out of every 100 rupee that central government get, it is spending almost 50% of that money on interest payment and salary, pension and maintenance, defense, etc. this money is not productive money. This is just going into the maintenance, okay? Maintenance of the status quo. Then 15% of the money center has to give to states through various mechanisms. And then another 15% go into subsidies, central schemes, okay, and some of the other welfare expenditure. This 15% is roughly your welfare expenditure. And then remaining 20% is development expenditure. So this is the overall picture. In this scenario, what is noticeable is that in past, interest payment was close to 33%. In last 10-15 years, continuously we have brought down the share of interest payment. So interest payments have reduced, and even the salary, pension and maintenance have reduced a bit. And meanwhile, development expenditure has increased. So we have increased development expenditure by 10%. Meanwhile, we have reduced this reoccurring expenditure by 10. And that is where the readjustment has happened. We have been able to increase our capital expenditure, developmental expenditure. And for that, what we had to do, we have to discipline ourselves. Only with more discipline, this has been possible. Okay. So this is the analysis of our expenditure. And what does it mean? It means that we are becoming more disciplined. We are working for betterment of the country in a way, because we are spending more money on development expenditure and we are cutting down on our committed expenditure. So this is a positive development, and in general we can call it the improving stability and improving quality of expenditure in our budget. So our budget has seen many improvements in the last few years. In last few years, we have been able to cut down the fiscal deficit. In last few years, we have continuously been able to cut down the other deficits as well. Okay. Meanwhile, we have also been able to increase the development of the capital expenditure, and we have been able to cut down on the committed expenditure. So this is the development regarding the expenditure. And with development expenditure increasing more and more, if we can continue this further, if we are able to reduce interest payment more, let's say they further reduce to 20%, then extra 5% maybe we can spend on education and health, and we will be able to cover that major gap area in India in future. Or maybe we can spend that money on research and development. So in India, there are a lot of areas where we are not able to spend adequate money. Okay, where we have gaps, gap areas. Education, health, research and development. These are major areas where India lacks. Even infrastructure. We are spending more and more on infrastructure, but still it is less than what ideally should happen in India. Okay, I will not call it technically gap area, but this is below potential. And these are significant gaps. If we further improve the tax to GDP ratio, any improvement in tax to GDP ratio or any improvement in quality of expenditure will give us more money towards education, health, and money to be spent on research and development and possibly infrastructure. So that is why we need to continuously bring expenditure reforms, we need to continuously bring tax reforms, and we should be trying to make efforts to further improve tax to GDP ratio and improve the quality of expenditure further. With this, we have completed the general macroeconomic perspective on the budget. Some of the numbers on budget we will discuss tomorrow, and we will continue this discussion tomorrow with more topics. I hope this discussion has helped you and helped you to understand the broader issues, broader challenges, and the general macroeconomic picture of India. So we'll be meeting tomorrow. Thank you.